I think this book, which is James Thurber's book, The 13 Clocks, was the first time I ever read a book as a child and discovered that words were beautiful. And I came back to it as an adult and discovered they were just as beautiful as I had thought when I was 7 years old. So this is the beginning of James Thurber's The 13 Clocks. Once upon a time, in a gloomy castle on a lonely hill where there were 13 clocks that wouldn't go, there lived a cold, aggressive duke and his niece, the Princess Saralinda. She was warm in every wind and weather, but he was always cold. His hands were as cold as his smile and almost as cold as his heart. He wore gloves when he was asleep, and he wore gloves when he was awake, which made it difficult for him to pick up pins or coins or the kernels of nuts or to tear the wings from nightingales. He was 6'4" and 46 and even colder than he thought he was. One eye wore a velvet patch, the other glittered through a monocle, which made half his body seem closer to you than the other half. He had lost one eye when he was 12, for he was fond of peering into nests and lairs in search of birds and animals to maul. One afternoon, a mother shrike had mauled him first. His nights were spent in evil dreams, and his days were given to wicked schemes. Wickedly scheming, he would limp and cackle through the cold corridors of the castle, planning new, impossible feats for the suitors of Saralinda to perform. He did not wish to give her hand in marriage, since her hand was the only warm hand in the castle. Even the hands of his watch and the hands of all the 13 clocks were frozen. They had all frozen at the same time on a snowy night 7 years before, and after that it was always 10 minutes to 5 in the castle. Travelers and mariners would look up at the gloomy castle on the lonely hill and say, "Time lies frozen there. It's always then, it's never now." The cold duke was afraid of now, for now has warmth and urgency, and then is dead and buried. Now might bring a certain night of gay and shining courage. But no, the cold duke muttered, the prince will break himself against a new and awful labor, a place too high to reach, a thing too far to find, a burden too heavy to lift. The duke was afraid of now, but he tampered with the clocks to see if they wouldn't go, out of a strange perversity, praying that they wouldn't. Tinkers and tinkerers and a few wizards who happened by tried to start the clocks with tools or magic words, or by shaking them and cursing, but nothing whirred or ticked. The clocks were dead, and in the end, brooding on it, the duke decided he had murdered time, slain it with his sword and wiped his bloody blade upon its beard and left it lying there, bleeding hours and minutes, its springs uncoiled and sprawling, its pendulum disintegrating. The duke limped because his legs were of different lengths. The right one had outgrown the left because when he was young, he had spent his morning place-kicking puppies and punting kittens. He would say to a suitor, "What is the difference in the length of my legs?" And if the youth replied, "Why, one is shorter than the other," the duke would run him through with the sword he carried in his sword cane and feed him to the geese. The suitor was supposed to say, "Why, one is longer than the other." Many a prince had been run through for naming the wrong difference. Others had been slain for offenses equally trivial, trampling the duke's camellias, failing to praise his wines, staring too long at his gloves, gazing too long at his niece. Those who survived his scorn and sword were given incredible labors to perform in order to win his niece's hand, the only warm hand in the castle, where time had frozen to death at 10 minutes to 5 one snowy night. They were told to cut a slice of moon, or change the ocean into wine. They were set to finding things that never were and building things that could not be. They came and tried and failed and disappeared and never came again. And some, as I have said, were slain for using names that start with X, or dropping spoons, or wearing rings, or speaking disrespectfully of sin.